do it.
Welcome, Ray.
Thank
you
you
so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so I know who you are. I know you're awesome, but tell the people who you are and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name is Ray Rivera.
Yes.
I'm still a licensed agent. I'm mostly, for the most part, now a full-time investor. Been in the business now for a little over 13 years. Did 3 years in property management, 10 years in sales, and went full-time in investments about a year ago now.
All right, so you're a real estate agent and real estate investor. How long were you a real estate agent before you decided, hey, I want to really chop into real estate investing side?
So I'll break it down a little bit. So was an agent, still an active agent, right?
Yes.
10 years in that side of the business. It was about 5 years into the business when I first worked with my first investor. I had this aha moment where I had this young man from Asia who is very successful, still in our market. And he got into the business with very little experience, very little money, and he just failed forward and he did well. I was so impressed. It was my moment to realize it's like an aha moment, right? I was thinking to myself, like, here's this other person that's coming from Asia with very little knowledge, doesn't know anything construction, with very little means, and he's willing to take a risk. And then it came to my brain. I was thinking to myself, what did my parents come to this country for? Like, what are we doing,
That's
right,
awesome.
to get
Love it.
moving forward?
Yes.
And with that passion, I decided I'll take the leap. And through another story I can unpack, I ended up getting to the investment side shortly thereafter.
So, a lot of people, you made a decision that this is what you wanted to do. Who gave you that first, who took a chance on you?
So interesting. I'll get a little shout out. So I actually, when I got into the first deal, right, I wanted to connect to different people. One of the young men who actually gave me kind of his time was, you might know him, his name is Chris Jefferson.
Really?
Yeah.
Chris Jefferson?
The bird dog and Chris Jefferson.
Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Wow.
So Chris, I'll never forget this. Where did we go? I think it was, what's that restaurant by Short Pump? Louis,
Bar Louis?
Bar Louis.
Yeah.
So we went to Bar Louis. I'll never forget this. And me and my business partner at that time, we went to meet Chris. And
okay, don't mean to cut you off, but how did you connect with Chris? And how was this gonna happen?
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna do it.
So funny. So through another individual who's a business partner, his name is Donnie of the Ninja Delancey. So Donnie and I, we would work a lot from downtown Richmond and Gather specifically. And Chris had an office at the time there.
Nice.
And we would just see each other. And being workaholics, you just see each other all the time. And then one day I just wanted to pick his brains about investing. And so I asked him, hey, any chance that I could pick your brains?
I love it.
I just need 20, 30 minutes, right? Whatever you want, whatever you want to eat, whatever. I just need 30 minutes and I just want the real deal, right?
Yeah.
I want meats and potatoes, everything. And he gave me some plugs, right? He gave me my first lender.
Chris Jefferson.
Yeah.
I follow him, of course, on Instagram. I love it. And then you had an event, and I went to see him in person.
Yes.
And that was exciting.
Yes.
But I love that you tell this story because this just shows you that sometimes it's just for you to step out and ask questions. Just ask questions. Ask people out to lunch. I mean, if you're following people on social media, reach out to them.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's small world. One person could really change your life.
Yes. I have that one person who really sat me down and gave me a different way of doing things. Yeah, because when we first started, it was tough. It was very tough. I mean, we bought a little bitty house in Richmond. It was not in the best area, but we just took a chance. The house was only like $35,000.
Take them all today.
We would pull up, and my husband would be like, "Babe, go in the house. We just had to go in the house. Don't look to the right." That's how bad it was.
Yes.
But we did that, and we sacrificed, and we sold that house, and we made almost $100,000.
Oh, good job,
Yeah,
Tracy.
so we stayed in it for 3 years,
Good
and
job,
so we
girl.
just took that money and bought another house, and that's kind of how we started. But we were using our own money, and then I sat down with Nicole Reed.
Yep.
And she's like, "Why are you doing it like that?" And I'm
Yes.
like, "What other way is there to do it?" And so
Yes.
she started
Yes.
talking to me about using investor
Yes.
money, which I had
Yes.
no clue
OPM.
about all of that. And so, it's just all about having that conversation, and don't be afraid to reach out to people. Successful people love to talk about how they got successful, and
Absolutely.
they love to help you. So thank you for sharing that story.
Yeah, I think little tidbit is a lot of people are willing to give a hand
Yeah.
up. Maybe not as much a hand out, but definitely a hand up.
Yeah.
And so just collaborating with people.
Absolutely. So you started the first Spanish and English speaking meetup in the Richmond area. So tell us a little bit about that. It's called GRID.
Yeah, so in English is GRID, Building the Future RVA. In Spanish is GRID, Construyendo el Futuro, RVA. RVA for Richmond, Virginia. And we did that. We're making some changes to it, so we paused it temporarily. However, we... You want to keep going?
No, yeah.
Good. Yeah, but so we're making some tweaks to it. However, we intend to move forward. We're just not too sure the changes just yet.
Okay.
But yeah, and actually we had Chris, he was the second speaker that came out to speak there.
Really?
Yeah, that was a full house, and I think it ran like almost 4 hours long.
I want to take him to lunch. Chris, if you're listening, we need to do lunch.
I plug people in that have helped me out. They've earned it and deserve it. So absolutely.
That is so awesome. So why was it important to you to like tap into the Spanish community?
Yeah. So actually, funny story. I didn't do it intentionally at first, right? So what happened was I had one client who was a contractor. He was a tech guy, right? HVAC tech specifically. And he was doing construction. So he was doing my punch list, right? Just like on the agent side, we had a client preparing the house. He was doing my punch list. Fast forward, what ended up happening is I started giving him bigger and bigger jobs. His name is Mr. Chavez. What ended up happening later on is when I had this Asian client of mine do this flip, I approached Mr. Chavez and I say, hey, you know how to do construction, you're doing renovations for kitchens and bathrooms, and you're doing all these punch list items. What if I was able to connect you into investing, right? Instead of you doing it for someone else, you doing it for yourself and you making the big bucks.
I love that.
Truth, I think, was limited belief. His perspective was, I don't do hard money. I don't know X, Y, and Z. If you believe in this, you go do it, right? Put your money where your mouth is. And so I was very passionate. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, inner city. I had seen everyone either sell and make money, move to Florida, and my parents to this day are still lifelong tenants, right? Renters. And so I grew my entire life seeing this opportunity kind of come and go in front of my eyes. And I try to resonate with the people in Churchill and in Richmond where they're seeing all this movement, and it's like either you don't know how to capitalize or you can't, right? And so now as an adult in the business where I'm at, I'm like, this is my shot. I get to relive that, awesome. Except now I can capitalize, which is why I'm also willing to like collaborate and share as much, because I still remember the young kid from Brooklyn, New York, from Bushwick, who didn't have that opportunity. So kind of how it happened. And basically this contractor said, put your money in my fist. I ended up doing a flip, but I don't know as much about construction. And he ended up doing my renovation. I did well. I think we made on that deal, it was about 60 grand. And that was about a 45, 60-day flip. And then I did another one in Colonial Heights, and that one was about 40. Collectively between these two, we made over 100,000 in less than 4 or 5 months.
I like it.
And that was that aha moment where, what am I doing, right? Like, if I can do this in addition to this, why not? Well, then I also realized that Mr. Chavez bought into it. And once I realized he did one and he did another, then he referred me someone. Then this person saw me online. Then this other person. And then eventually I was servicing 70 families a year. Predominantly, I would say 90% of my clientele was Hispanic, blue collar, that didn't know much about investments, but knew construction. And I helped lead everything else.
I love that. Yeah, that is awesome. So throughout the year, you have like events where you actually take people into a property that you are renovating to kind of walk them through the process and tell them, what to do first, what to do second, and how the whole deal works. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so free event, right? I know people who charge for these events, big bucks too, but again, I try to give back. And I know that there's a lot of power in collaboration. Yeah. Genuinely, I really mean that. I've come to where I'm at and further along because there's a people capital. And so fast forward, so some of the events that we do is we'll actually host it at one of our properties, completely free. We'll set it up like on Facebook, on a meetup, on a private group. I'll invite people. And what we do is I typically try to do it where the house is not fully finished, but it's on the way to be finished. And we talk about what the house looked like. We talk about what we did, the value adds. We talk about layout configuration, right? Thinking of the end buyer in mind. We're thinking about what we're going to invest based on the price point and the end buyer. And then we talk about the actual cost. And then finally, we talk about what's projected to actually be the earned income at the end. So we break the entire deal apart. And, we do it in like 2 hours. So we've thought about doing a bigger boot camp to it.
Yeah, I think you should.
But yeah, it's exciting. Yeah, it's something that's like we haven't perfected it yet, but we're working on it.
I'm pretty sure it's perfected.
No.
All right, let's talk financing, because this was a huge deal. You know, again, I told the story about how we started because we just didn't know. It's all about education. You know, the more you know, the more you know. But I wish I would have known about using investors' money. You know, because there are a lot of investors out there that they want to give you money.
Yeah, 100%.
How much do you need?
100%. There's tons of people. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so let's talk about, let's just take someone who's listening to this show and they want to get into real estate investing. They have, maybe a house that, what they inherited or something like that, and they just need money to fix it up. How do they start?
So to make sure understood, so let's say a person that already owns a house.
Yes.
Maybe it's their house, maybe it's grandpa's.
Yes.
And now they're needing money in order to fix it.
To sell it.
Right?
Yes.
So there's different things you can do. Right, you can do the traditional, like calling an agent and whatnot. Don't bash, I still have my agent license.
Yes.
I think a simple thing is you can collaborate, do a joint venture, maybe with an investor, right? So there's a couple things. So now I'm trying to speak to the person that is in that shoe specifically, which actually I know someone in those shoes right now.
Yes.
And so what I presented to them is I said, understand that you have an asset, right? I understand there's a house and it's a home, there's an emotional attachment to it. However, take that away. This is an asset. Now that you understand it's an asset, understand what it's worth, right? So let's look at what the depth is versus what it's worth today as is, but then also the potential upside. Now, this is where if you bring an experienced investor, like you, for example, you could walk this property with them and you could take a look at it and say, this is what it's going to be worth once it's fixed up, doing these changes.
Yes.
This is what it's going to cost to do this. Now what ends up happening is, now you just need the money piece, right? Which is taking debt. Now, debt, you can do it with traditional financing, which is typically like Wells Fargo and all these big banks. You could do it with non-traditional, which you could do hard money, or you could do even private money. So with hard money, this is going to be typically, there's different companies in Richmond. These are individuals that, they dedicate themselves to giving money. You can do it with hard money. They will probably have either, if it's paid off, they'll have a first position. If it's not paid off, they'll have a second position. Now, there are also people who do private money, right?
Yes.
And or you call it OPM, other people's money.
Yes.
And so you can look for OPM. Now the crazy thing is OPM doesn't have to be like this crazy mystical thing. It could be literally your grandfather, it could be your uncle, it could be a doctor, right? It could be like the engineer who's working in a neighborhood. Like it could be anyone. Really, in reality, everyone's an investor. If you have a 401k, you already invest your money. Right? And there's a lot of people who have 20,000, 40,000, 50,000. The thing about it is if you were to grab that money and loan it, and you were loaning it at 10%, 12%, 15%, you would go so much further than if you just kept it in a 401. So I don't bash a 401, but understand that like to a certain degree, almost everyone's already an investor. It's just you don't realize it because you're not actively managing that money. But you can do that, and you can get OPM. That OPM gets loaned to the owner. The owner fixes it up, sells the house, and then pays that money plus a percentage, and it's a win-win. And if you just did this again, everyone wins.
So you talked about joint venture. Explain that.
Yeah, good question. So a joint venture essentially is just a partnership, right? And it doesn't have to be forever. It's not per se a marriage, right? For whatever that's worth. But it's more limited, right? It's temporarily. So you're gonna have someone that's gonna come together, you're gonna consummate for this temporary time to do whatever it is. So if you say it's just a venture for this one specific deal, this one time, and then afterwards you can dissolve it, you can disintegrate it, or you can keep it completely up to you.
Nuggets. You are dropping some gems. I love that. So, I'm sure we have investors that are watching today and they just want to have more information.
Yeah.
Can they contact you?
Absolutely. Yeah.
How do they contact you?
Good question. You can reach out. Typically, you can either call me. If I don't answer, leave a message. You can shoot me a text. That's typically a little bit easiest. My direct number is 804-833-5711.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah. 804-833-5711.
5711. So I will just tell a quick story. I have been watching you for a while, for years. That's not a stalk or anything, but but when I was first getting into the business, I was watching. Like I have social media mentors, and you are definitely one of mine.
Aw, that's sweet.
you had a house on Broadway.
Yes.
And we bought a house in Hopewell. And
Yes.
we were driving by, and I saw your big sign in the yard, and it said open house. And my husband and I were driving down, and I was like, babe, pull over. We gotta go. It's Ray Rivera right there. I'm like, pull over. So we get out and we go into the house and we bought that house.
Yes.
And so you were so warm and so welcoming.
Aww.
And you were asking us, like, what would you guys do different? Because I think the house was kind of sitting, and you were saying, like, what asking us. But every time I see you, you just have such a great attitude. You have such a warm spirit.
Aww.
And I thank you for that.
You're sweet. Absolutely.
I really do thank you for that. You have this thing where I feel like you like to see people do well. Yeah, and I appreciate that about you. So thank you so much for
Absolutely
coming on to the show. And I want to invite you back anytime, because you just dropped some really good gems. And I know that there's so much more, but for the sake of time, we have to end now. But thank you so much, Ray.
Thank you for having me.
All
It's
right.
a pleasure.
The champ is here! The champ is here! The champ is here!
All right,
I
thank
like
you.
it. You have a great voice, Tracy.